So that is what we call sustainable development. A development process which will cater to the needs of the present, will honor the culture of the past, and will also preserve and conserve for the future generations to come. And that is what sustainable development is. In this context, we deem it fit to invite Dr. Aditya Kesari Mishra sir, who is a giant in this field. He has worked extensively. He has worked extensively in the field of development, migration, sustainable development. He has so many books to his credit that it will take half an hour for us to tell all the names of the books. So, well, we welcome you, Aditya sir,
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
and we are very privileged to have you with us today on this great occasion. Deepali Mishra, please mute yourselves. All of you, please mute yourselves. So it's a privilege, ladies and gentlemen, to have Dr. Aditya Kesari Mishra with us today. And I welcome Mishra sir, and I request my senior colleague, Dr. Santosh Kumar Panigrahi sir, to kindly welcome the resource person and all the participants, and also to deliver his welcome address. Panigrahi sir, thank you.
All regions, turn on microphone button to activate presenter your microphone.
Namaskar. So, on behalf of Regional Center Bhubaneswar, on behalf of Indira Gandhi National Open University, I welcome all my dear learners. Also, I welcome the today's resource person, Dr. Aditya Kesari Mishra. No doubt, he is one of the giant in this field. I welcome you, sir. So, on behalf of Regional Center Bhubaneswar, on behalf of myself also. So, dear learners, so we are conducting this webinar for you to just to give exposure for different faculty member. Those are very outstanding in this field. So, by this way, you can get also some exposure to different kind of topics. I mean, you can understand different fields. I mean, what kind of work we are doing and what kind of knowledge you can gain. RC Bhubaneswar is one of the oldest regional center in our country. So IGNOU is established in 1985. So this regional center also established in 1987. So we are offering more than 300 programs in different. I mean, it's kind of skill development course. You can say a bachelor or masters and or diploma. I mean, we are offering all kind of courses to our learners. So in our region, I mean, more number of students are taking admission in our Odisha region. So we have a 3 regional center in one in Anugur, one is Koraput, and in Bhubaneswar. So we are very much happy for that. We are catering higher education to our state, to our learners, to get more higher education, how they can get the higher education in their locality, in our state. So today you are going to discuss sustainable development in India, issues, challenges and problems. So our experts, Dr. Aditya sir, no doubt, he is a giant in this field. So I welcome you, sir, for today's program. So thank you very much, all of you, and today's webinar. Thank you once again. Over to Mr. Nandu, sir.
Thank you, sir, for your warm welcome and kind address to all our participants. May I now request my colleague Dr. Prabhat Kumar Jena to give a brief introduction of our today's research person, Dr. Aditya Kesari Mishra, sir. Prabhat, sir, please.
Thank you, sir. Very good afternoon to everybody. Honorable Senior General Director, Dr. M.K. Das, sir. Respected Additional Director, Dr. S.K. Panigay, sir. Respected Deputy Director, Dr. B.C. Nandas, sir. Respected Research Person, Dr. Aditya Kumar, sir. Aditya Kesari Mishra, sir. Respected other dignitaries, my dear colleagues and learners. So we are very much fortunate to get such a resource person so that we all can be enlightened with new ideas. So before introducing the guest of the speaker, let me first thank to him for accepting our invitation, and we are very, on behalf of IGNOU, I would like to thank him for accepting our invitation, and we are very much fortunate to listen to him, though he is a renowned orator, and we don't need much introduction about him. Still then, let me briefly introduce him. Dr. Aditya Kesari Mishra is the faculty member in sociology, and he is in the Department of Sociology, Central University, Odisha, Koraput. He has graduated in sociology from Autonomous College, Ravens Autonomous College, Cuttack in 2000, and he has completed the post PG. Hello. Please mute. All are requested to mute their microphone. Please mute your microphone.
Dikshita Behera, kindly mute yourself. Dikshita Behera, please kindly mute yourself.
Dr. Aditya sir has post-graduated from University of Hyderabad in 2002, and he has also completed his MPhil degree and a PhD degree. He has completed the PhD degree from University of Hyderabad in 2010, and the topic was social capital and conservation of biodiversity. Is a very good topic. And he has also qualified a UGC NET in sociology, and that is UGC NET is being conducted by University Guards Commission, and he has qualified the UGC NET in 2001. Regarding his publication, he has published many books. Just let me point out 3-4 books, and his interesting book was on the COVID pandemic, COVID, and the book name was Investigating Reverse Migration During the COVID-19 Pandemic Experience from India. He has also published another book in Pandemic Predominates, Risk Response and Resilience. Another book is on industrialization and environmental sustainability. Then is contemporary gender discourse. Then agriculture technology and globalization. That was published from New Delhi. Then next book is Main Currents in Development Studies. And the 7th book is Social Capital and Biodiversity. So it's a great news that he has completed and completely published it for 7 books, and he has also many research publications added to his credit. He has published 37 research papers, which has been published both in national and international level. He has also published 22 books, including these 7, and it's a great job. And despite of his busy schedule, he has also published such huge number of books That's a great news, and we are very much thankful to him. And he has also presented many papers. If you count, he has presented more than 100 presentations, both in national and international level. So no doubt, he's a very good expert in this field. And today's topic is on sustainable development in India, issues, challenges, and possibility. So this is a great topic, and we have chosen a great expert so that we all are keen to listen to him. So thank you very much, sir, for accepting our invitation. And I will, on behalf of IGNO, I welcome you to this meeting. So thank you very much, sir. Over to you, sir. Anand sir.
Thank you, sir. May I now request our today's resource person, Dr. Aditya Kesari Mishra, sir, to give the deliberation on his webinar today, that is Sustainable Development in India, Issues, Challenges and Possibilities. Dr. Aditya Kesari Mishra, sir. Sir, welcome you again and kindly join us, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. Esteemed Sampos sir, Prabhas sir, Bimal sir, and the team from IGNO who have invited me to deliver this deliberation. In fact, as Professor Bimal Nanda has clearly mentioned, the title of my deliberation is Sustainable Development in India, Issues, Challenges and Possibilities. In fact, this is a topic, when you talk about sustainable development, this is a topic of everyone's deliberation. To certain extent, all of us know about development, sustainable development. So this is not something new to all of us. But the point is that here I will try to consolidate some of my thoughts on underdevelopment, development, and sustainable development with specific reference to the issues and challenges of sustainable development with specific reference to India. Of course, I will highlight some of the possible possibilities in tackling the whole issue of sustainable development. In fact, when you talk about sustainable development, I consider this is a necessity. This is not a choice. It is a necessity because we witness degradation in almost all aspects of our daily life, be it environment, be it social, be it economy, be it polity, be it technology. In essence, we find obstacles, we find degradations, we find destructions with regards to all components of our socio-economic and political life. So it is in this context there is the necessity of engaging with the whole buzzword of contemporary development discourse, that is what is called sustainable development. The buzzword, this is not confined to India, rather this is a global buzzword. But the point is that this is an worrisome affair when you talk about India, because India is, as you know very well, it is a populous country, and there are strengths, there are weaknesses, there are developments, there are underdevelopments. So to make our development sustainable, there is the necessity of engaging with sustainable development. India, as a rapid developing nation, faces the unique challenge of balancing, first, economic growth, second, ecological, preservation or restoration, and social justice. So this is a lecture that aims to explore the complex issue hindering the sustainable development practice in India. It also highlights challenges like policy implementation gaps, lack of awareness, and socio-economic disparities that exist almost all layers of our society. At the same time, the deliberation will uncover possibilities and solution through innovation, traditional knowledge, community participation, and inclusive governance, and more importantly, the role of tribals. By bringing together diverse voices and perspectives, we aim at imagining a development model that is both people-centered and planet-friendly in nature. Okay, with this brief introductory remark, my today's presentation is structured on 9 aspects. First, what I have mentioned just now, that is introducing the theme of the seminar, theme of my lecture. Second, very interesting, underdevelopment, development and sustainable development. Third, why sustainable development? Fourth, the genesis or the genealogy of the journey of sustainable development. Then the state of sustainable development in the world context. Then the sixth one, developing sustainable development, India's initiatives. Then the seventh one, roadmap for sustainable development in Indian context, with specific reference to certain praxeological possibilities. And the eighth one, approaches to sustainable development, and the deliberation will end with concluding remark. In fact, when you talk about sustainable development, it is closely linked to the idea of development. And the moment you talk about development, that very term development is closely linked to the idea of underdevelopment. So I find these three categories, these three concepts, for example, underdevelopment, development, and sustainable development are interrelated in nature. Where underdevelopment, as you know very well, it will be quite, childish on my part if I explain underdevelopment, because we know what is underdevelopment. But just to start the discourse, let me mention underdevelopment basically refers to a condition where an individual or a country experiences low level of income, or the very project of industrialization, or for example, what is much more important, that is extremely low level of human development. It is often characterized by widespread incidences of poverty, limited access to healthcare and education, and weak infrastructure. At the same time, underdeveloped regions tend to have high dependency on agriculture and raw material exports. And underdeveloped societies or underdeveloped countries are those countries which can also be characterized as political instability, corruption, and lack of investment. So addressing underdevelopment certainly requires a focus on structural transformation and equitable policy reforms. Hence, there is the necessity of development. Because nobody loves to remain in underdeveloped states. Nobody likes underdevelopment. Everybody feels to, or everybody wishes to become the part and parcel of development. So then, what is development? Again, this is everyone's cup of tea. Again, there is no point of, answering the whole question of development. But for me, when I talk about development, this is not, or what we say Vikas, for example, this is not a phenomenon of contemporary times. I always consider it won't be wrong to mention that the idea of development is paralleled with the idea of the emergence as well as the gradual expansion of human civilization. Because in each stage of human civilization, we find the element of development. That may be underdevelopment in the next stage of human development or human civilization, but at a particular stage of human development, we find the element of development. That's the reason for which I always consider the idea of development is parallel with the idea of human civilization. And therefore, the idea of development is always considered as a continuous category, because development has never development. I mean, we can't say that there is no development, because development is part and parcel of every society. The progress of human development depends on the productive engagement with the idea of development, right? So now question arises, what is then development? The idea of development is broadly considered as, quote unquote, a planned social change. It may mean, many things to many scholars. But the broad meaning, for a common man's point of view, development basically refers to, a planned social change. It essentially encompasses economic growth, structural economic change, industrialization, self-actualization, individual development or human development, cultural development, many things, for example. So when we talk about development in today's point of view, today's lecture point of view, one can find development in terms of economic growth, along with improvements in living standards, health, education, and rights. Let me go from my comfort zone. If the audience will allow me, I can say that while we talk about sustainable development, here development can also refer to the maximization or the exploitation of the natural resources, and there lies the problem. Okay, I'll be coming to that particular aspect very shortly. In fact, development seeks to create diversified economies with strong industrial and service sectors. Modern development aims at, reducing inequalities and enhancing opportunities for all. In a nutshell, true development is inclusive and ensures that growth benefits are fairly distributed. Then what is sustainable development? Because I had already mentioned these three terminologies are interrelated: underdevelopment, development, and sustainable development. Sustainable development, as you know very well, it is the practice of meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future. It integrates economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protection. Mind it, dear participants, sustainable development is not all about environmental protection, environmental restoration, environmental preservation, environmental conservation, for example. Okay, it also refers to economic growth as well as social inclusion. I think the third one is much more important. Okay, I mean, there lies the problem of, the whole issue of, development, because of lack of social inclusion, for example. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, what we know very well, SDG, guide global efforts towards sustainability. It promotes the responsible use of natural resources and a transition to renewable energy sources. Therefore, sustainable development basically emphasizes long-term planning over short-term economic gains. Now, quite often, as I was, talking about this particular contradiction with the very concept of sustainable development. Sustainable development is often misunderstood as being solely about protecting the environment, restoring the environment, preserving the environment. But this is a narrow conception of the whole idea of sustainable development. Because sustainable development is not the development of natural environment, green environment, or nature, for example. It is actually about development that can sustain over time, ensuring continuity and resilience for future generations. So that future generation doesn't necessarily include only environment, only nature, for example. After the introduction of Sustainable Development Goals, that is SDG, the concept became, clearer, highlighting that sustainability is not just ecological, but also economic and social. Therefore, it emphasizes all-round development covering poverty reduction. If you go through these 17 sustainable goals, for example, okay, you can find that these SDGs, okay, basically emphasize all-round development covering poverty reduction, poverty reduction, health, education, equality, and economic growth, so that progress will be inclusive as well as lasting in nature. In essence, sustainable development means creating systems and societies, because systems are part and parcel of the very society in which we used to live in, right? So creating systems and societies that can endure, not merely conserving nature in isolation. And there is also the interrelations between underdevelopment, development, and sustainable development. Underdevelopment is often a starting point that requires strategic development interventions to improve conditions. Traditional development alone can lead to environmental degradation if sustainability is not prioritized. Therefore, sustainable development offers a balanced path forward, addressing both poverty and ecological concerns. Okay. Therefore, countries must transition from underdevelopment to development through sustainable means to ensure sustainable growth, sustainable development. Therefore, the three concepts are connected or interconnected. Overcoming underdevelopment through development that is sustainable is the ultimate goal of the whole discourse, the project of development, if not the sustainable development per se. Now, quite before some time, Professor Nanda was highlighting a very wonderful message or statement given by our father of nation, Mahatma Gandhi. So linking Gandhiji's quote to development is quite relevant in this context. What he thought? To Gandhi, I quote, "The world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed." This very statement, quotation, highlights the imbalance between responsible use and over-exploitation of resources. We have enough, or nature has enough to provide as per the needs of the individuals. But it's too difficult to, fulfill the greeds of the individuals. In the context of development, it reminds us that growth should focus on fulfilling basic needs. If you go back to 1960s and 70s, where you can we know very well that's the kind of decadal approach of development. During 60s and 70s, that is called basic need approach. I think Professor Stritton has written widely on this particular aspect, right? So, in the context of development, it reminds us that growth should focus on fulfilling basic human needs, like, for example, health, education, and more importantly nowadays, for example, peace or dignity of life, for example. Exploitative environment driven by greed and unchecked consumption depletes or destroys natural resources and hence vulnerable communities, like, for example, tribal communities. This type of development creates short-term wealth but long-term environmental and societal crisis. Sustainable development, by contrast, aligns with Gandhiji's philosophy by promoting fairness, resource conservation, and intergenerational responsibility. Now, question arises, why my next level of deliberation is why sustainable development? What is so necessity about sustainable development? I'm being reminded of one of the finest contributions made by Ulrich, you know, Beck. Ulrich Beck, especially his concept of risk society. Beck argues that modern development creates manufactured risks. Like, for example, you can mention technological hazards, or for example, climate change, for example. In a sense, we are in, or we are inaugurating, or we will enter into, the risk society. Sustainable development becomes essential in this context because it seeks to minimize these systematic risks by promoting responsible use of or judicious use of resources and long-term planning. Beck emphasizes reflexive modernization, where societies critically reflect on the consequences of their actions. Sustainable development embodies this by integrating environmental, social, and economic consideration. So, without sustainable practices, risks like environmental degradation, inequality, and health crisis escalate, reinforcing the very dangers Beck has already, describes. Therefore, practicing sustainable development is a way to transform rich society into a resilient society. So, when you talk about, sustainable development, obviously one should not forget, the kind of cautious statement, or cautious contribution which has been made by, Ulrich Beck, especially with his concept of risk society. Now, I have mentioned, 8 to 10 reasons behind why should you study sustainable development. Of course, as a part of development, there is the necessity of studying sustainable development. But sustainable development ensures that natural resources are preserved. Through this particular approach, we can preserve natural resources. Second, it also promotes, long-term economic growth. Third, it addresses poverty and inequality. Fourth, it reduces the impact of climate change. Fifth, it supports global health by minimizing, pollution. You know, then sixth, it strengthens, community resilience by promoting local solutions. What our beloved Prime Minister always used to mention, vocal for local, for example. So it also enhances job creation. It aligns with international, commitments like the UN Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs). It ensures ethical responsibility by balancing the needs of, triple P, people, planet, and the profit, for example. And or our greediness towards economic growth, for example. Then the last one, sustainable development is essential for maintaining the rich resources, that is biodiversity, which supports ecosystem balance and life on earth, right? So these are 10 reasons or rationalities behind studying the sustainable development. Now, I've spent a couple of minutes time with regards to the sustainable development. In fact, though the term has become extremely popular soon after the publication of 17 Sustainable Development Goals, however, one can find the genesis of the very idea of sustainable development, if not the concept as such, for example, because the concept has been coined by Brundtland Commission down the year 1997, and it got popularized in 2015 with SDG. However, the very idea was quite silent, during 60s and 70s, okay, when there was growing awareness of pollution, deforestation, and resource depletion, okay. There is a classic, book which name is Silent Spring. It was published in the year 1962 by Rachel Carson, who highlights the ecological damage caused by the human activity, because we are, the makers of our own destructions. We are responsible for our own degradations, for example. Okay, so the very idea, if you allow me to put in this way, the very idea was germinated during 1972 UN Conference on Human Environment in Stockholm, which was held in Stockholm. Okay, it was a key early moment linking environment and development. Though the term was not there, however, one can find the very meaning within this particular international convention, right? And this phase marked the beginning of efforts to balance economic growth with environmental protection. Now, the term, as I was mentioning just before some time, the term sustainable development gained its momentum with 1987 Brundtland report, that is our common future. Okay, where you can find the definition, I quote, development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Okay, the report emphasized the interconnectedness of environmental, economic, and social challenges. I think these are the three pillars on which the whole idea of sustainable development is established, that is environmental, social, and economic. It argued for growth that doesn't degrade ecosystems, okay, or deepen poverty. This document became a foundational reference for global policy discussions on sustainability, right? Okay, and the very idea of sustainable development got institutionalized, in 1992, especially in 1992 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, which formalized sustainable development as a global agenda. Key outcomes included the Rio Declaration, Agenda 21, and the establishment of Commission on Sustainable Development. Right. So the very idea of sustainable development got institutionalized in 1992 World Summit. Governments, NGOs, and international agencies started to integrate sustainability into their development plans. And thereafter, you can see many developments happened, after this Rio conference or convention. Okay, and this was the platform where one can find the institutionalization of sustainable development. However, it got expanded through the Millennium and Sustainable Development Goals. In 2000, the UN adopted, MDG, Millennium Development Goals, linking poverty reduction with sustainability. Building on that, or to extend that goal, for example, in the 2015 UN Sustainable Development Goals presented a broader and more integrated version of what we know MDG, or Millennium Development Goals. As you know very well, this SDG, there are 17 goals covering issues like climate action or climate change, energy, gender or gender equality, addressing poverty, health. Okay, they emphasize that sustainability must include both human development and environmental protection. Okay, that's the reason for which at the beginning of my deliveries I mentioned that sustainable development is not all about the development of the nature, the protection of the nature, or the restoration of or the conservation of natural catch or green environment, for example. Okay, it is something beyond. Okay, so these goals reflect a global consensus on the importance of inclusive and equitable development, and perhaps we all are struggling to achieve this equitable as well as inclusive development. Now, sustainable development is all about 17 goals. 17 goals, comprise of 169 targets, and the targets are designed to be achieved by 2030, covering social, economic, and environmental dimensions. The SDGs end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity, prosperity and peace for all. right? So they emphasize interconnectedness, recognizing that progress in one goal often supports advancement in others. And so this is all about SDG. We know to a larger extent about SDG. So I'm not, focusing on SDG now. My next point of discussion will be, state of sustainable development. Very shortly, I will be highlighting the state of sustainable development in the world context. While progress has been made on sustainable development goals, global efforts remain uneven and insufficient across many regions, many communities, many countries, for example. Climate change, biodiversity loss, and rising inequalities continue to challenge sustainable development, if not in India, but in world context. The COVID-19 pandemic and ongoing conflicts have reversed gains in health, education, and because it has given a solid setback to the progress of human society, right? Developed nations have advanced in clean energy and innovation, but many developing countries still face resource and infrastructure gaps. Achieving global sustainability certainly requires stronger international cooperation, more inclusive policies, and urgent climate action. Now, uh, my second section of my deliberation, that is called sustainable development in India, issues and challenges. Yeah, issues. When you talk about issues, there are n number of issues that used to prevent, that used to, or that are considered as obstacles in the process of achieving sustainable development, achieving the whole project of sustainable development. One such issue or challenge, that is population pressure. India's population, which is exceeding 1.4 billion, has put extreme pressure on natural resources, public services, and also the environment. And this growth strains different properties of the nature in terms of water, supply of food, energy infrastructure, and often leading to, unsustainable practices. So population pressure is one of the binding problems of, or issues and challenges of sustainable development in India. Second, urbanization and infrastructure stress. Rapid as well as unplanned urbanization in India has led to overcrowded cities with insufficient housing, transport, and sanitation. We know the picture of Mumbai, we know the picture of Delhi and Calcutta right now, for example. It's impossible to have human habitation in all those cities because the cities are full now. Okay, and problems are multifarious in nature. Okay, urban slums are expanding, right, and increasing vulnerability to health hazards and environmental pollution also, right. Let me give you the example of Mumbai's Dharavi slum. Okay, that has certainly housed millions of people, okay, who are living with poor sanitation and high population density. Now, the next issue, as you know very well, that doesn't need any explanation, that is called environmental deforestation, air pollution, industrial waste discharge are degrading, India's natural ecosystems. Loss of biodiversity and damage to forests and rivers are happening, on everyday basis. Okay, which are widespread in nature, right? And this is happening because of, uneven development project. And the next one, there is scarcity of water or water scarcity. Many parts of India face water shortages due to overuse, insufficient irrigation, and pollution. So here when you say water, I'm saying both for the purpose of irrigation as well as for the purpose of domestic, for example. Even many communities have not yet received, drinking water facility, right? And many farming communities are struggling to get irrigation facility, for example. Okay, so in a sense, we have not yet fully, processed the water facility for the purpose of both irrigation as well as drinking, for example. And groundwater levels are dropping alarmingly, and access to clean drinking water remains unequal. This has become a challenge altogether. And the next issue, one can say, in terms of climate change, that has certainly led to vulnerability, with specific reference to the weaker sections of the society or tribal society, for example. India is highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, including extreme weather events, sea level rise, and changing rainfall patterns. And Odisha is the classic example. Okay, which has received in almost every year. Okay, or in almost 2 years interval, we used to receive at least one cyclone, for example. Okay, and in a sense, there is a phenomenal degradation of climatic condition. Okay, if not in Odisha, but in global level. And these effects threaten agriculture, livelihoods, and health, especially in rural as well as the people who are living in rural as well as in coastal areas, for example. And there is also agricultural sustainability, okay, or unsustainability more appropriately. For example, unsustainable farming practices, like for example overuse of chemical fertilizers and excessive groundwater extraction used to degrade the soil and water quality. Small farmers struggle with climate variabilities, debt, and increasing and decreasing productivity, for example. Okay, so again, this is, there is unsustainability of agriculture. Here, dear participant, let me give you the whole example of our Kalia scheme, for example. I don't know where is it or how it is being, implemented, where is it, or whether it is in the process of implementation, or for example, it was just a flagship program, for example. Okay, and I mean, it was an ambitious program. Okay, and with that, many farmers, for example, they are so optimistic about agriculture development, their farming development. But now, for example, they are in a dreamland, whether they will be getting that scheme or not, for example. Even God doesn't know about this particular aspect, Kalia scheme, for example. Even Kalia doesn't know what will happen to Kalia, for example. Okay, now. And the next, that is weak policy implementation. As you know very well, dear participants, development used, when we make certain plan, for example, that should happen in 4 to 5 stages. One is formulation, where we used to conceive the idea, okay, where we used to prepare the idea, we formulate, for example, and then after formulation, there is, implementation, for example. Okay, we implement, or after enactment there is implementation. Okay, and after implementation, many times we say that programs are being implemented. Okay, and we fail to, the next phase is more important than implementation. I always consider that is called execution, for example. And because of lack of education, we are not in a position, to deliver the fruits of that particular project to the stakeholders, for example. Okay, because we are not serious enough that whether that scheme is reaching to the unleashed or not, for example. Okay, so we are very weak at execution part, for example. And beyond education, what is much more important, perhaps that should be the the thumb rule of any development project, plan or program, for example, that is called evaluation, for example. Okay, so enactment, then implementation, then execution, and then evaluation, for example. If you evaluate, probably we will be in a position to know to what extent it has reached to the stakeholders, for example. And if it has not reached, then what are the drawbacks, for example. But most of the time we say that we implement, but we fail to execute properly, or we fail to evaluate the scheme, for example, even though schemes are running since decades, for example, but we do not know, for example, okay, whether it is reaching to the unreached or not, for example. Again, there lies the problem. So in a sense, the point that I'm trying to mention is that because of weak policy implementation, weak policy execution, weak policy evaluation, for example, we fail to, for example, know to what extent the policies are, reaching to, the respected stakeholders, for example. So India has strong environmental laws, but enforcement is extremely weak due to bureaucratic delays, lack of transparency, and insufficient monitoring, for example. Again, corruption is there, okay, which is binding in nature, right? Okay. And next, waste management crisis. Yeah, of course, uh, we have beloved Prime Minister. I mean, soon after his office of in the office of Prime Minister, right? He has launched the most ambitious program, that is Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, for example. Okay. And in a sense, a Swachh Bharat mission, for example. Okay. But the point is that again, if you see the operation, the functioning of Swachh Bharat at the grassroots level, you will find the dark realities. Okay, and India generates vast amounts of solid plastic and electronic waste, and much of which ends off in landfills or open dump areas, for example. Lack of proper segregation and recycling infrastructure worsens pollution and health risks. In fact, I can proudly mention that, okay, we to a larger extent responsible for this particular issue of waste management crisis, because we are the individuals who used to create the waste. It's not the government, it's not the state, for example. We are generating, but we never ever support with the kind of initiative that has been initiated by the government, for example. Okay, now these are some of the issues that used to challenge the whole discourse of sustainable development in India. Now, in my third part of my deliberation, I will be highlighting sustainable development or developing sustainable development towards India's initiatives, for example. It's not we are not doing anything. We have made series of plan and programs, as a programs or policies, for example, in this regard. We have made the series of plans, the series of policies with respect to education, with respect to environment, with respect to eradication of poverty, with respect to, for example, technological development, with respect to health, for example. So it's not we have started our engagement just after or the implementation of SDG. Prior to SDG, even for example, with CCP, after the formation of our constitution, or for example after past 5 year plans, we have started many programs for our own development. Okay, to develop socio-economic and environmental conditions, for example. Okay? So I mean this has become a regular phenomenon. But let me so far as this section is concerned, let me mention a couple of initiatives that government has undertaken, and that has certainly promulgated the whole process of sustainable development. The first one, that is in terms of National Action Plan on Climate Change, because when you talk about sustainable development, when you talk about environmental crisis or environmental problem, for example, one issue that used to come to the center stage, that is called climate change. And India has launched the National Action Plan on Climate Change down the year 2008 to promote sustainable growth and address climate change. This change or this action plan includes missions focused on areas such as solar energy, energy efficiency, and sustainable agriculture. This plan guides India's effort to reduce carbon emissions while promoting development. Uh, And there is also renewable energy expansion. India has made significant strides in expanding renewable energy, especially solar and wind power, through initiatives like National Solar Mission. And the next, as I mentioned just before some time, that is Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, right? This vision launched in the year 2014, that focuses on improving sanitation, hygiene, and waste management across India. It has helped build millions of toilets, reducing open defecation, and improving public health, especially in rural regions, for example. Okay, so it has made a tremendous impact a tremendous role in the very process of sanitation and hygiene condition of rural life or tribal areas. Now, there is another initiative one can find, that is the sustainable urban development. Okay, which can be conceptualized in the form of smart cities mission. India's smart cities mission aims to develop 100 cities with sustainable infrastructure, efficient resource management, and improved quality of life. And this program certainly promotes green buildings, waste recycling, renewable energy use, and public transportation to reduce urban pollution. By making cities more livable and resilient, this initiative supports sustainable urbanization and economic growth. So, and the next initiative, which is very widespread also, that is called conservation and biodiversity efforts. India protects its natural heritage through programs focused on forest conservation, wildlife protection, and biodiversity preservation. In a sense, soon after 1992 Rio Summit, India has also enacted its own Biodiversity Act down the year 2002, just after one decade of the Rio Convention. Schemes like the Tiger Project and Appreciation Drive contribute to restoring ecosystems and mitigating climate impact, for example. Right. So these efforts certainly help maintaining ecological balance, essential for sustainable development and the well-being of future generations. And there is also, India's national water mission that focuses on conserving water, improving water use efficiency, and ensuring equitable water distribution. The mission promotes watershed management, rainwater harvesting, and better irrigation practices to, address water scarcity. Initiatives is vital for sustainable agriculture and ensuring water security for millions of people. Now, there is also, we have also made phenomenal progress in promoting organic farming, which helps to protect the environment, promotes biodiversity, and offers healthier food options for the members of the community. Right? This initiative certainly encourages sustainable agriculture practices that are environmentally friendly and economically viable for farmers. And there is also nowadays we have started using electrical vehicles, for example, in a sense that is part and parcel of the larger mission of sustainable transport initiatives. Okay, the government is investing in sustainable transport options like, for example, electric vehicles, EVs, okay, or metro systems, for example, and improved public transit infrastructures, right? And these efforts aim to reduce urban air pollution, lower carbon emissions, and enhance the sustainability of India's transport sector, for example. Okay, so in a sense, we are trying to minimize the pollution level are generated from this sector, that is transport sector. Now, again, we have also witnessed many programs with respect to health. We are having National Rural Health Mission, for example. Okay, and there is also rural development and livelihood programs, for example. Okay, where one can find, like, for example, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, right? That supports sustainable livelihoods by providing rural employment, linked to various, resource management. The government also promotes eco-friendly livelihoods through skill development in organic farming, renewable energy, and handicrafts, for example. Okay, even in Odisha, at the national level, at the state level also, even in our Odisha, we are having Odisha Tribal Empowerment and Livelihood Program. Okay, we have also initiated, our government has also initiated in protecting the livelihood of the poor tribals, for example. Okay, right? And so these are some of the initiatives that government has undertaken. I mean, these are the certain few initiatives just to schematize schematize my deliberation. I just mentioned this 8 to 10 initiatives as initiated by the government of India, as well as the state governments, for example. Okay. Okay. Now, so this is all about sustainable development in India with specific reference to issues and challenges and also the initiatives. For example, okay, at the end of my deliberation, let me mention about some of the possible solutions, or for example, certain praxeological practices through which we can attain the whole idea of the whole goal of sustainable development, for example. Okay, so my next point of discussion would be in terms of roadmap for sustainable development in India towards praxeological or practice oriented possibilities, the last part of my deliberation. In fact, here we need to take into account the social, environmental, economic, health, right? Aspects of our society. Okay, because that will certainly help us to develop ourselves, if not individually, but community level also. Right. So the first and foremost will be in terms of enhancing renewable energy adoption. Okay, that will be the first possibility that we need to explore. We need not only explore, rather to expand also. Okay, so there is the necessity of expanding investment in solar and wind energy, right? Infrastructure across rural and urban areas, for example, provide subsidies and incentives for rooftop solar panels and decentralized energy solutions, for example. Okay, strengthen grid integration and energy storage technologies to ensure reliability. The second, in terms of promoting water conservation and management, implement widespread rainwater harvesting ecosystems in both urban and rural communities. There is the necessity of encouraging efficient irrigation techniques such as drip and sprinkler systems among farmers. We know, I mean, we were having our own system of irrigation in the form of Pani Panchayat. Okay, but very well. The Panchayat. If you see the functioning of the Panchayat, very interesting, right? So in a sense, again, the Panchayat has failed in providing water to the farmers, especially whose lands are located in tailland areas, for example. Okay, and there is the necessity of revitalizing traditional water bodies and watershed management projects to enhance groundwater recharge. The third one, that is sustainable agricultural practices, that is in terms of to promote organic farming and reduce dependence on chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Okay, as far as possible, we need to minimize the use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Okay, and facilitate farmers training programs on climate resilient and conservation agriculture methods. Right. I mean, just before some days, there was the discussion on what FPO, farmers producer organizations, right? In a sense, we have found many FPOs at the grassroots level, but the point is that they hardly function independently, okay, or they hardly know the nuances of those organizations, even though we have a larger policy with respect to that FPO, for example. So in a sense, appropriate trainings are very much necessary to these farmers, training with respect to, for example, cultivation, right, and production also, even post production also, right. And then waste reduction and recycling, that is also very much necessary. Okay, we need to promote awareness campaigns on minimizing single-use plastics, most importantly, and encouraging reuse. And urban sustainable development things we need to undertake, that certainly implement smart city technologies for efficient energy, water, and waste management. Now, I mean, in 10 minutes time, or 5 to 7 minutes time, I will wind up, because Professor Bimal sir, okay, he has given the indication that I need to wind up.
No, sir. Carry
I will
on.
finish in 5 to 10 minutes time. Okay. Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you. And the next one, that is climate change mitigation and adaptation. If you see the worst affected communities, so far as climate change is concerned, they are, our tribal communities. Okay, so there is the necessity of enhancing early warning systems and disaster preparedness for climate related events. Promote climate resilient infrastructure and housing, especially in vulnerable regions, and this is very much necessary, especially in the coastal part of Odisha, because quite frequently we encounter or we face natural disasters in the form of cyclones. Okay, and there is the necessity of supporting community based natural resource management for adaptive capacity building. Okay, and the next one, again, education and public awareness, right? We implement, other day I was interacting with the collector of one of the districts. Okay, and he was saying, and sir, in this district there are 500 development programs are going here. Then, I mean, I just smiled at the at collector for some time, and I asked him, sir, 500 schemes, and probably not even 5 to 10 schemes are known to these poor tribals, for example. Okay, so the question is that we fail to make awareness about the schemes. Okay, we fail to educate the populace, for example. Okay, and if we fail to educate, if we fail to our the people concerned, for example, then what is the meaning of making n number of plans and programs, for example, if it is not reaching to the unreached, if it is not reaching to the people concerned, if the people concerned are not getting maximum benefit out of that, for example. Okay, so therefore there is a necessity of integrating sustainability concepts into the syllabi of schools, the colleges and universities. Okay, and also the institutes, for example, and conduct community workshops and campaigns promoting eco-friendly lifestyles and encourage youth participation in environmental conservation and policy advocacy. And finally, or for example, strengthening governance and policy implementation, improve coordination among central, state, and local governments for SDG aligned programs. See, this is my personal opinion, and I'm a little serious also. When talking about SDG at the global level, at the national level, I think the real charge, the real ownership should be given to the Panchayat Raj institutions, because these are the grassroots level institutions who are extremely close to the communities. Okay, so I mean, any scheme, if you want to implement, for example, try to implement from the panchayat level itself. Okay, and give power to that these grassroots institutions should not be the defunct institutions. Rather, these grassroots institutions should be dynamic institutions. Okay, and we have seen the power of panchayats, especially during the management of COVID-19 in Odisha, for example. Okay, so I mean, when you talk about SDG, for example, I think whatever plans and programs we are making, we should take the vantage role of panchayat raj institutions that are operating at the grassroots level. And yes, the final one, you can say in the term in terms of sustainable livelihoods and poverty reductions. Okay, promote skill development in green jobs. Like renewable energy, organic farming, and waste management. Support micro enterprises and cooperatives focused on sustainable products and services, for example. Okay, and implement social protection schemes linked with environmental conservation initiatives. Right. So and also try to make certain micro projects for the protection of our environment, or for the conservation of biodiversity of natural or biodiversity of medicinal plants, or medicinal plants, for example. Right. So in a sense, we need to promote afforestation and reforestation projects with native species. Okay, I mean, as part of my PhD program, when I was doing my PhD program on medicinal plants. Okay, especially in Harishankar Nrishanath belt, for example, in Odisha. Okay, I found that there is always a kind of conflict of interest between the government, between the state machinery, between the forest department and the community members, for example. The community members, they always demand that we should we should conserve or we should plant those medicinal plants, okay, which have been vanished from this region, okay. But government departments or during that particular time, the forest department, the officials of the forest department, they prefer those trees which are available in those areas, for example. In a sense, they don't want to work beyond their comfort zone, for example, okay. And as a result, the community members, they felt their interest to integrate with the government, for example, or the forest department, for example, okay. So in a sense, the kind of initiatives we are making as part of the whole project of afforestation or reforestation, okay, we need to include the members of the community, okay. And so these are some of the possible solutions, possible answers for orienting for attaining sustainable development in Indian context. Okay. Now, at last, I will try to schematize my thoughts with regards to the possibilities, okay, in the form of certain approaches, okay. And while talking about the approach, for example, the first and foremost approach, because as you know, now we have started realizing the lost tradition, the importance of lost tradition, that is in terms of indigenous knowledge, indigenous knowledge system, that is IKS, for example, okay. In a sense, for a long time we have ignored the importance of indigenous knowledge system or traditional knowledge system, and now thanks to our government, for example, okay, it is taking proactive measure in protecting the IKS, for example. Even you see, the last 9th August, we have celebrated International Indigenous Day, for example. On that day, we have the theme was indigenous knowledge and AI, for example, artificial intelligence, for example, okay. And now time has come to integrate both, for example, okay. So the point that I'm trying to mention is that the first approach should be in terms of socio-religious approach, okay. And that approach is nothing but in this approach I basically highlight the fact that in India we are having the rich practice of, for example, worshipping certain plants, sacred, not plants, rather sacred plants, in terms of tulsi tree, in terms of bale tree, okay, which encourages their conservation and protection. It's not that we are not doing that, okay, but the spirit to a larger extent has deteriorated, okay. So we need to regenerate that spirit of protecting that sacred trees, okay. If not sacred trees, rather tree as such need to be protected, right? And these plants, like for example tulsi and bale, for example, these plants are deeply embedded in religious rituals and daily life, fostering respect for nature, for example. Similarly, apart from trees, for example, similarly, animals like, for example, cow, okay, monkeys, snakes are revered in various traditions, leading to community efforts to protect them, okay. So this spiritual connection helps preserving biodiversity by integrating environmental care with cultural beliefs. This is the first approach. The second approach, okay, community-based natural resource management. Of course, there is a strong debate or debate pertaining to the CFM, community forest management, okay, soon after the entry of JFM, for example, okay, because always there is a conflict of interest. So I was just citing this particular example, okay, conflict of interest between the people who are at the helm of affairs, okay, and the people from the community, for example. But whatever the conflict may be, for example, okay, communities or members of the community, they are the custodians of the nature, for example, okay. So as a result, we need to empower them to protect. We need to adopt a communitarian approach, okay, by where we should prioritize the members of the community, and we ask the members of the community to take care of their own resources, for example. Because even today, for example, why, for example, we are making our tours, we are making our travel plans to Koraput or to northeast region of India, okay. Why? Now, because we find the rich green patch, we find zero pollution area. Okay, and who are the custodians of these areas? The poor tribals, for example. Okay, they for a long time they have been maintaining, they have been preserving, they have been protecting. I mean those areas, for example. Okay, so we need to give power to them. We need to empower them. Okay, and we need to give respect to their own ideas and knowledge pertaining to the nature or the resources or the properties of the nature. Okay, so this collective stewardship encourages sustainable use and preservation of local resources, right? Empowering these communities through legal recognition strengthens sustainable practices. The second one, empowering women, or empowerment approach, okay, with specific reference to women. Women, especially in rural and tribal India, often act as the primary managers of household resources like water, fuel, and food, for example. The traditional knowledge about sustainable harvesting, seed saving, and herbal medicine is vital for conservation. So, empowering women through education and participation in decision making improves sustainable, outcomes. And the next one, that is traditional ecological knowledge system. Indigenous communities in India possess rich ecological knowledge passed down from generation to generation. This knowledge helps maintain biodiversity and promotes sustainable agricultural forestry, for example. Okay, and the next approach, that is social equity or an inclusive approach. Okay, sustainable development in India requires addressing social inequalities related to caste, class, and gender. Marginalized groups often suffer disproportionately, environmental degradation and limited access to resources. Therefore, inclusive policies and participatory governance ensure fair distribution of benefits and responsibilities, right? And then, of course, urban community engagement, rapid urbanization in India represents challenges, but also opportunities for community-driven sustainable efforts, right? Participatory urban governance enhances resource management and quality of life. And of course, the education and social change are much more important, because education systems in India increasingly incorporate environmental studies and sustainable concepts, right? Okay, education empowers communities to adopt sustainable lifestyles and innovations, right? Okay, and then of course it is the theme of the current generation nowadays. We are practicing what we say social entrepreneurship, for example. Okay, the social enterprises in India addresses environmental challenges while creating livelihoods, for example. They mobilize local communities to produce eco-friendly goods, manage waste, and conserve resources. So social entrepreneurship leverages community participation and local knowledge for sustainable impact. As a why I am talking about social entrepreneurship, for example. Okay, to a larger extent, it will minimize their dependence upon the nature, for example. At the same time, this will also promote them from the stage of underdevelopment to, for example, development. They can develop their own economic condition, and by which we can also materialize the whole dream of our Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, that is self-reliant India, for example. Okay, and then these are certain things. Let me conclude my talk. As you know very well, Mahatma Gandhi, he always emphasizes simplicity and harmony with how to live with simplicity and harmony with nature, for example. Okay, he always advocates for small scale village based economies that respect the environment, for example. Okay, and there is also another pioneering figure of India. He is B.R. Ambedkar, who always highlights on social justice as essential for of course, this is quite essential for the empowerment of the weaker section of the society. Okay, and of course there is another figure, okay, who is the stalwart of environmental protection. Her name is Vandana Shiva. Okay, an environmental activist and thinker who basically champions biodiversity conservation and sustainable agriculture rooted in indigenous knowledge. And of course, how can we forget the contribution of Jawaharlal Nehru, for example. India's first prime minister laid the foundation for industrial growth. Of course, it is quite debatable, but the point is that when you talk about industry in the environmental context, it is always it always degrades the environment. But at the same time, okay, if you want to prosper, there is the necessity of industry. That's the reason for which once he considers industries are the temples of modern India. But the point is that we need to give special care. Okay, we need to go for industrialization with human face, for example. Okay, so he was very much he laid the foundation for industrial growth while recognizing the need for balancing in development with ecological preservation. And last, okay, that is the finest economist that India has ever seen. He is Amartya Sen, who focuses on development as freedom, underlying that true sustainability includes social, economic, and political empowerment for all, for example. Okay, so I mean, it is extremely essential for the individual to develop. Unless until we provide freedom to individual, perhaps the first and the last element of development, that is called freedom, for example. Okay, and I mean, these are some of the with these views of the builders of India, for example. I mean, let me mention that in this process of agilizing the project of the whole project of sustainable development, the state has to play a vital role. Okay, by making different policies, by implementing different acts, for example, and by executing as well as by evaluating different development programs. At the same time, the communities are also backbone of grassroots sustainability efforts. Okay, we should not keep communities in silent mode. Rather, we need to activate the communities as well as their knowledge systems, right? And third, the tribal groups, we need to, we cannot forget the large contribution of the tribal groups, for example. Okay, their deep ecological knowledge systems or traditional life skills, for example, that are inherently sustainable, making them vital custodians of forest biodiversity and indigenous practices. At the same time, okay, we need to highlight the role of women who are considered as the critical agent of change, especially in rural and tribal areas, for example. Okay, and last but not the least, okay, that is academics. Okay, academics or research institutions, for example. Okay, they play a vital role in making, because our role, we need to conduct micro projects on different aspects of the society, or different aspects of the 17 SDG, for example. Okay, and that will certainly help us to know the drawbacks, or that will certainly help us to know what could be the possible solution for promoting either education, or for example environment, or for example the economic condition of any community, for example. So each actor, be it state, community, tribe, women, or academy, for example, or to a larger extent, as I was mentioning just before, sometime PRI, Panchayat Raj institution, each actor used to bring unique strengths, and collaboration among them is essential for achieving India's sustainable development goals, development projects. Thank you, all of you. This is all from my side, and I sincerely thank IGNOU, especially the officers, for giving me this opportunity to share some of my random thoughts before the audience. Thank you, all of you, once again. And over to Dr. Nanda.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mishra. It was really a wonderful derivation and rich with examples. It was not quite tame and blunt theories. So it was quite practical and quite interesting. And it only reiterates my suggestion to Dr. Panigrahi to give your name as a speaker today. And I think our audience, our participants have gained immensely from your lively discussion. Now it's the time to get intervention from the other side, because our listeners have heard us very patiently, and in the consumer market, the customer is the king, and in the webinar, besides the research person, the listener is also the king. So now is the time to welcome the listeners, to give them the platform. Now I open the house for discussion, but there are certain floor rules which you have to abide by. when we speak, we'll ensure that others are also allowed to speak, and if somebody else is starting to speak, we must stop there. So we must introduce before we speak. I open the floor for discussion with a request to honor the floor rules. Thank you. Please, sir, please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Am I audible to you? Am I audible to you, sir?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Please.
Thank you very much. My name is Arun Agarwal. I'm a student of Sustainability, Master in Sustainability Sciences. I'm really thankful to Aditya, sir. You have completely comprehended summarized our complete 1 year education, whatever we have learned from a lot of books. I have only two questions for you, sir. My first question is uh, that this is 2025. In the next 5 years, we would be completing the SDG target. Like 2030 is the last year to be completed with all the SDG goal 17s and their targets. So, what would be the next? What is the next thing we will do regarding this one? I don't know that we would be able to achieve everything within next 5 years. This is my first question, and my second question is, that the rapid urbanization of the villages, rapid, I will say, concretization of every villages, because I'm from a village, and most of the places are full with concrete. The natural beauty has completely gone, and people are given with these things from the government on the name of development, because today's topic is development. Sustainability is obviously important. So, what do you think about it? Making a village turn into a town or a city, is it really a development, or this is something else? Kindly guide me, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Shall I intervene, Professor Nanda sir?
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir, for your two wonderful questions. And I am being fascinated by your first question. Very wonderful. Okay. That is, what can we do within 5 years of time? Because we drafted in the year 2015, and in next 5 years time we have to achieve our goal. I think which is next to impossible, for example. But the point that, because I am an academician, okay, I am not an administrator. So here I'm not going to give any rosy statements. We had our MDG, okay, and we had our deadline also, okay. But what extent we got progress, that is subject to inquiry, for example. So with regards to SDG, I can say that we need to conduct a thorough, inquiry, a thorough introspection with respect to our own initiatives. I think that will certainly guide us to go for our next project. I'm sure, I mean, we cannot achieve all these targets by 2030, but at least we can take the initiatives. Okay, maybe for example, we can extend, because a child cannot grow, or a child cannot become a man in one day, for example. Okay, it needs 20 years or 30 years time, for example. So obviously, when we think to develop the entire globe in 15 years time, it is next to impossible. But the point is that since we have made our mandate clear, therefore we need to initiate certain policies in line with the goals, for example, so that gradually we can arrive at the goal. Okay, if not fully, but to a certain extent, we can arrive at the goal, and we may, for example, extend that timeline to next 15 years or 20 years time, for example. But before that, there is the necessity of making introspection, making internal assessment of the functioning of whatever plans and programs we are making, for example. And perhaps for that thing, we need to play a vital role. We, the researchers, we, the academicians, okay, we, the independent thinkers, for example, okay, or researchers, for example, we will be in a particular position to know to what extent we are successful in achieving, for example, SDGs by 2030, for example. Now, coming to your second question, yes, concretization is the reality right now, because nobody loves to stay in traditional houses. everybody starts to enjoy within four walls air conditioned room, and that's the reality altogether. Okay, and I mean we cannot do that. But the point is that we need to compensate that also, right? And that's the reason for which I always emphasize our project of deforestation or afforestation or plantation, for example. Okay, to the extent we are making concrete jungles, okay, we need to see that to what extent we are making the natural jungles at the same time. Okay, if you're doing that, probably we can maintain a balance between this concrete jungle and the natural jungle or the green jungle, for example. Okay, so probably my answer will be, for example, because I mean it's too difficult to stop, right? Because I mean who doesn't love to live in an air conditioned house? Everybody loves to live in the air conditioned house, for example. Okay, in many people, because I am from a village background. Okay, maybe so far as the villagers are concerned, they may not prefer. But the point is that I mean we cannot stop those concrete jungles in urban areas or in semi-urban areas, like because that is entering into our tribal, so our village areas, for example. Okay, so the answer may be, for example, we can we I mean we need to minimize those aspects. I mean, Professor Nanda was highlighting, and I was also highlighting, that is, need and greed, for example. Okay, we need to make the balance between our need and greed, for example. Okay, right? So see, we are having the tendency. Suppose in tribal track, when we are roaming around, for example. I mean, even though there is no necessity of, for example, air condition, okay, but still then we put our AC on when we are driving in tribal area, right? So it depends on your mindset, depends on your it depends on your own sense of, for example, engagement with the larger issue, for example. Okay, so obviously there is we need to check the individual behavior, we need to check we need to sensitize the village communities. At the same time, we need to go for maximum afforestation or for example this plantation initiative. Okay, and this initiatives should not be symbolic in nature, because what I see in contemporary times, these afforestation initiatives are becoming so symbolic in nature. Okay, I'm not taking any name here. For example, we all are party to that. For example, so it should not be symbolic. Rather, it should be spirited in nature. We should do it in spirit, if not in symbolic. Thank you. Next.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. It was really an engaging question and enchanting discussion. So it rather made the webinar quite fruitful. So my sincere thanks to both the questioner and the research person. Thank you. Thanks to both of you. Any other query from any other quarters, please?
Namaste, sir.
Yes, Abhishek ji, kahiye.
Sir, I have two questions.
Hmm.
Sir, my first question is that we are teaching environment from class 3 onwards, and till PG, at least every course has one environment course.
Please come on video, Abhishek ji.
Sir,
Can you switch on your video?
sir, are we visible?
Yes,
Yeah.
now you are visible.
Sir, namaste, sir. Sir, my question is that from class 3 onwards, we have one environment subject till graduation or post-graduation, sir. But sir, even after teaching one or two generations about environment, we see that people are very backward in terms of environmental awareness. That people may be educating in MSc environment, but they are still using polythene. They are throwing here and there. They are not interested in buying EVs, and we see hundreds of problems. So, sir, what is the problem in our education system that the environmental awareness is not getting imparted to the people's day-to-day life? We are teaching them, but that is not getting reflected. And sir, my second question is that, sir, you mentioned about tribals. So, sir, could you please explain that how tribals are getting more vulnerable towards climate change? Sir, these are my two questions.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
The first question I find very interesting. Again, I mean, the whole comment I was making just for some time. that is in terms of symbolic versus spirited, for example. Okay, certain things we profess without any practice. Here, the whole issue of professing and practicing. Okay, we teach for the sake of teaching. Okay, we read for the sake of reading. But now the time has come. Okay, because now environment, the green patch has started knocking our door. Okay, if you don't protect me, then I cannot protect you. That's the kind of challenge that the nature has given to us. Okay, so the point is that yes, of course, our whatever our pedagogy, whatever our syllabus, whatever our system of learning, system of teaching, system of executing the things. Okay, we need to change that. We need to inculcate the importance of environment on the minds of the students. Now, question arises: it is very easy to mention. Okay, as a speaker, for example, okay, it's very easy for me to answer the question. But the point is that we need to make our course so rigorous, right? Right? Students should not be confined to the four walls of the classroom. Rather, we need to release to them to the external reality, the natural patch, for example. They need to witness to what extent we have deteriorated the environment. Okay, and what is their viewpoint, for example. Okay, so things cannot be changed overnight. But the point is that if you change our syllabus with certain amount of seriousness, for example, okay, with certain amount of practice, for example, I mean there is a difference. There is a huge gap in between professing and practicing. So now time has come. Apart from teaching, for example, we need to practice it in reality. Then perhaps things can be changed. This is question number one. Question number two, we are witnessing environmental changes everywhere, and tribal areas are not exception. Once the tribals, they used to get everything from their surrounding. In fact, they used to get their food from nature. They used to get the medicine from nature. Everything they used to get from nature. But because of the environmental changes, now we are witnessing the downfall of the natural gap, the downfall of the green patch, for example. Okay, so as a result, see, earlier we when I was a student at my graduation level, it was quite difficult on my part to witness a tribal student as my fellow friend, for example. But
Yes, sir.
nowadays, see, it's a good move altogether. Okay, they are entering into the different walks of life. But again, their number is extremely low. There are many
Yes.
tribals who are living in and around the jungle, and now the jungle is not fair. We are deteriorating the jungle. So in that context, okay, it has certainly impacted their livelihood. Okay, the livelihood, it includes not only their food, not only their income, but also their way of life, for example, because they get everything from the nature, starting from food to medicine to their cultural practices to their festivals, for example, because they are very close to the nature, if not close to the towns, or for example the urban areas, for example. Okay, so this is from my side for these two questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Misra, once again. Uh, the charm of a speaker is known by the number of questions in the uh, grade of qualitative questions is asked. And I don't have to speak more. We have incited our participants to such an extent that we are getting n number of questions, and our n becomes infinite. So there lies your victory as a speaker, and I congratulate you on that. And if there is any other query, this should be the last query. We are running short of time. I request if any of you,
But
you can
Professor
wind up.
Professor Nanda, can I mention one sentence?
Please, sir.
Yeah, I have delivered many webinars. Okay, but frankly speaking, I have never seen such type of sober and silent and very sincere participant. Nobody has disturbed me during my presentation, during my deliberation. and now they are asking. I was thinking that perhaps they are doing some other things, but after getting the questions, now I am completely shocked. That means they were listening to my lecture. So I'm extremely thankful to all the participants.
Thank you so much, sir. We too, and we are thankful both to the participants and the honorable speaker today. So, if there is any other query, it's most welcome. But please be brief.
Sir, I want to ask a question. Sir, regarding. Hello, sir.
You are audible.
Sir, mainly, sir, what is the role of renewable energy in India's journey towards the sustainable development, sir? Mainly now in EVs in the market now. So, what is the role of mainly in renewable energy, sir? Future.
Yeah, see, energy as such is extremely important, right? So when you say renewable, you are asking about renewable energy, for example. So that is paramount, and unless until we protect that, unless until we judiciously use that, perhaps we will be nowhere in the future, right? So we need to protect that, we need to conserve that, and for that we need to go for certain certain initiatives and proper implementation of those initiatives also, right? Any energy is vital for the development of any country, for example. Okay, right? Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Uh, Good afternoon, sir. My name is Nikita Shah, and I have this year I've completed with my MSc in Environmental Science. So I have read all that SDG 17 SDG goal to achieve by 2030. So my doubt is that's out of 17 SDG, which SDG is most important to be achieved first, so that our progression towards the SDG development should be continue and can be achieved successfully by 2030. Out of 17, which SDGs are most important to be taken care at the first site?
See, you cannot single out 17. For me, as an academician, for me, 17 are important. But since you are asking in particular
Nikita sir, please mute yourself.
to go for the health, because I always consider if you are healthy, if you are fit, for example, if you are normal, for example, okay, so the SDGs which are linked to directly or indirectly linked to health, for example, those SDGs are more important for me than other SDGs. But in general, I can say that 17 SDGs are more important. But yes, health, education, and economy, these three components are much more important. So we should give special attention to those SDGs, okay, which are related to our education, our economy, and health.
As a environmental students, so we are very much careful about the environment. It's not because we are reading, but we have interest in that, so that we are enroll our name in this environmental studies and thing. But other people are not. So we are trying to give attention to our environment more and more, but our neighborhood, in fact in our family itself, they are not giving that importance. So how it's very difficult to attain that SDG. So far, so many years it was been done, but it's also continuing, but it's very difficult to achieve that SDG goal. So do we think that we can achieve it by 2030?
With the kind permission of the resource person, I will like to give a small intervention here. With your kind permission, sir.
Okay, yes.
I am just incited to give my point of view.
Okay.
See, actually, rules, regulations, governance, this will not come in handy to help as far as sustainable development is concerned. What matters is the society and culture. If you look at Indian culture, we are basically nature worshippers. When you worship the nature, you don't control it. When you are talking about material prosperity, you are controlling the nature. You are predicting it so that you can control it. And the more you control the nature, the more richer a nation you are. The Americans, the Chinese people, they're richer because they control nature. But they are the ones who are degrading the environment to the most. We, the Indian people, we are ruining our nature today because we have forgotten our culture. Our culture teaches us that we are worshippers of culture, worshippers of nature. That means we won't control nature, we will respect nature, and we will sustain nature. So that if we sustain our culture will sustain ourselves. So we have to strike at the root. We have to bring our culture again in, which we have forgotten all this while. Last 15 to 20 years we have been behind the West, behind the material culture. But we have our nature and our culture is spirit, as Swami Vivekananda said. So the spirit of India lies in its culture, lies in its nature, lies in its spirituality. So if we combine these three, nothing can prohibit us, nothing can prevent us from sustaining our nature. That's my intervention, sir. Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
So I think today was a very successful interaction. In fact, if anybody was sleeping, then it was enough to arise them, awake them. And we are really happy. After so many webinars, I am getting such a session where everybody is incited, everybody is excited, and everybody gets out of sleep, gets out of hunger. There is only one hunger, that is the hunger to ask questions and listen to the answers. Thank you so much, dear participants. Thank you so much, our esteemed resource person. It was really a fruitful discussion. Yes, please.
So
May I
I'm
know? Please.
Sir, I'm Joshi Das from
Yeah, this
Baleshwar.
is the last question, please.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Please go ahead.
Nature. So when we are living in nature, why we are doing concretization in the name of sustainable ability? We can do a nature-friendly, eco-friendly development, which is will be most effective for us.
Yes,
So
we
this is my
can.
first question, and my
Yes,
second question is why we need to do development in the concretization of in the village, because village peoples are so related to nature, they are very closely to nature. So if we make every villager earnable, they can do their earning by their lifestyle, so we don't need to concretize the village.
Okay.
And my last question is what thing I think the education is the most important thing for us to do in India for development and a great future. So can you clear me with these things?
Yeah, I think your in the first question itself you have answered your question. We as far as possible we should go for eco-friendly houses. Those who are wishing for that, I
But
think
sir,
they
this is
are
not
doing.
happening. We are cutting the trees, we are destroying the forest for in the name of development because we want to make a city.
Because who doesn't need a city, right? We need city also, but at the same time we should develop city not at the cost of the environment. Whatever damage we are doing, that's what I was saying. Whatever damage we are creating to the nature, at the same time we need to go for the regeneration of the nature in terms of afforestation or plantation, for example. That we need to do. Okay, and at the same time, what Professor Bimal sir was saying, and I was saying before some time, for example, we need to develop the awareness among the people concerned, that what extent we are ruining the nature. And once we ruin the nature, then nature will show its own impact on us. And at that period of time, nothing will be there to protect us, right? So now the time is there. We can go for, as far as possible, we can go for eco-friendly houses, eco-friendly technology, right? And eco-friendly lifestyles also. Where there is no necessity, there is no point of running air condition, for example. I was just citing the example of putting your AC when you are traveling in tribal areas, especially in Koraput and Malkangiri areas, for example, or northeast regions, for example. I mean,
Sam
there is,
from Baleshwar. So here we are facing a lot of flooding
we are
in these rainy days. So
the kind
the
of climate
conversation
Baleshwar has right now. We
what?
the kind of climate Baleshwar has right now, we are responsible for that. We have created that climate. Are you getting point? We have created the jungle, and you have to, since you have to pay for that, right? Since you have created the jungle, you have to face the heat of the jungle. You get point. So now we need to develop that consciousness, that awareness among individuals, right? If there is no necessity, don't go for that. And coming to your second question, right? That is something related to concrete houses or all these things, right? Or cities, necessity of concrete houses. See, the point is that, like for example, suppose you are a non-vegetarian, okay? Don't you like to eat mutton, for example? Don't you like to eat chicken, for example? Similarly, for example, when the world is fascinating, for example, okay, and when all are staying in concrete house, and concrete houses are protective to certain extent, so far as earthquake is concerned, several other things or other positive aspects are there. But the point is that again, the environmental aspect we need to take care. Right? Once I'm just forgetting his name, be then finance officer, once he mentioned that we can go for development, but we should go development in human. Okay, we should not compromise with the human aspect of the development, the environmental aspect of the development. Okay, that we need to nurture, that we need to take care. Okay, otherwise there is no harm to development, because we have to develop. We cannot say no to development. Mind you, okay, we cannot say no to development, because now time has come. We have to challenge China. We have to challenge, the other technologically sound countries, for example. Okay, so we should not simply live in jungle, for example. Okay, but again, jungles are much more important. Okay, because it's the jungle that we used to give life to us. Okay, so whatever degradation we have made for the jungles, now we need to regenerate those jungles, for example. Thank you.
So good afternoon. I want to know why there is very less career scope from environmental studies course. What is the scope
Who
of career scope?
who said there is less prospect in environmental studies? I think there are two domains right now which have got huge career prospect. One is environment and other one is health,
But
right?
sir,
The one,
there is very less job opportunity from this course
no,
from
no,
open side itself.
no, madam, jobs are enough, varieties of jobs are there, but point is that you are not aware of that particular job. There are various national institutions, there are various international institutions, there are various civil society organizations, okay, who ask for individuals who are having environment as their specialization. Point is
Sir,
that you need to explore that, madam.
I have a friend of mine who had completed a PhD, but still he did not get a job till now.
That is
He is
that we will discuss another day.
okay, sir.
Actually, that is beyond the scope of this webinar. But Aditya sir, being an expert in this field, is good enough to enlighten us in this regard. But he has tried to do this. But we can have a separate session someday.
Okay, sir.
Thank you
Thank you.
all. May I now request my senior colleague, Dr. Santosh Paningrai, to offer the formal vote of thanks. Paningrai sir, please.
Your microphone is on.
Thank you, Nanda sir. Sir, today is the other way out. I am not going to give thanks to Aditya sir. Rather, I am going to give thanks to my dear learners, because it is really unexpected. Because might be Aditya sir is lucky or we are lucky, we don't know, sir. Because we are doing lot of webinars, series of webinars. Because you are such a nice speaker, our learners are putting lot of questions to you. We are really thankful to learner first. Dear learners, we are very, very happy for you, because we do think that really it's a fruitful for you, because which purpose you are conducting webinar. So we do feel that it's really helpful to all the learners. So because learners are getting more motivated and very enthusiastic, and they are listening carefully and they are putting the question to sir. So we are very happy. Thank you very much, learners. And I extend my heartful thanks to Dr. Aditya sir, because he is really an extraordinary speaker. Sir spoke very, very well. Definitely our learners are enlightened out of this today's topic. That today's topic is a very relevant in today's scenario. Out of the busy schedule, sir has accepted our invitation. So on behalf of Regional Center Bhubaneswar, on behalf of my senior editor Manoj Das, on behalf of my colleagues, we really thanks to you accepting our invitation and present a nice presentation to our students. Thank you very much, sir, for today's presentation. Thank you once again. And also, I extend my heartful thanks, my dear colleague, my fellow friends, Dr. B.C. Nanda. Definitely, all the times he is taking more pain and he is organized. All the webinars very nicely, and also is calling the experts in their personal contact. Thank you very much, sir, to inviting such a nice expert. Thank you very much, sir. And also I extend my heartfelt thanks to my Jena sir, Manoj sir, my all colleagues who are present today's seminar. Thank you very much. Thank you all of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.